Before the flood wiped out the world, the book of Genesis revealed a hidden truth that divides all humanity into two types of people. Some walk in the light, like Abel, Seth, Noah, and Abraham, the faithful who cling to God. Others follow the dark path of Cain, of rebellion, of flesh over spirit, of a life built on pride and power. This is not just an ancient story. It is the blueprint of every soul that has ever lived. Why does Genesis declare such a divide? Why do some become the righteous, while others descend into corruption? And has this pattern been secretly shaping the destiny of nations for thousands of years? In this video, you will uncover the shocking mystery of Cain and Abel, the rivalry that set the stage for all human history. You will witness how the line of Seth carried righteousness, while the line of Cain built cities that crumbled in sin. You will step into the forbidden story of the sons of God and the daughters of men, a union that birthed chaos and drew the flood. And you will understand why Noah found favor, why Abraham was chosen, and why Genesis still whispers that every one of us must choose flesh or spirit, defiance or faith. This truth is more than history. It is your story. It is the battle raging in every heart. Comment below. Which side do you believe humanity is walking today? Are we closer to Cain or closer to Noah? Your voice matters here, and if these hidden Bible secrets ignite something in you, give this video a like, subscribe for more revelations, and share so others can see what has been concealed for centuries. Stay with me, because what Genesis reveals will not only shock you, it might just heal you. Cain and Abel, the first divide. From the very beginning, Genesis unveils a mystery that shakes the soul. Two brothers, born of the same parents, walked two entirely different paths. Abel lifted up an offering born out of faith, a sacrifice that carried his heart in every breath. Cain, on the other hand, gave an offering wrapped in pride and shadow, a gift of duty without surrender. God looked at Abel with favor, but Cain's offering he rejected. And in that moment, the first divide among mankind was revealed. This story is not just about ancient brothers, it is about us. How often do we live like Cain, going through the motions, keeping rituals while the heart grows cold? And how often do we forget that God does not measure the size of the offering, but the fire inside it? Imagine today, two people walking into church. One prays with tears, whispering his brokenness and trust. The other repeats words he does not mean, his lips moving, but his heart untouched. Outwardly, both look the same, yet heaven sees the truth. This is the same choice you and I face daily. Will our lives echo Abel's devotion or Cain's emptiness? Comment below. Do you believe our generation has become more like Cain, chasing form without spirit? And here lies the first lesson. It is not about the ritual, but the relationship. That is the heartbeat of Genesis, and it leads us into the next great divide, the line of Cain versus the line of Seth. When Cain murdered Abel, the earth itself cried out with blood, yet God gave Adam and Eve another son, Seth, and from him sprang a new beginning. Here the story of two lines begins, two types of people destined to shape the world. Cain's descendants built cities, crafted instruments, forged weapons, and filled the earth with their brilliance. Yet beneath their progress was the poison of arrogance. They glorified the strength of men, but forgot the fear of God. Meanwhile, the line of Seth was humble, but they began to call upon the name of the Lord. Two legacies, side by side, one dazzling in earthly power, the other radiant in spiritual faith. This is more than genealogy, it is prophecy. Look at history and see the pattern repeat. Empires rise in splendor, cities built with towers scraping the sky, yet corruption eats them from within. Compare that with the quiet remnant, small communities of faith that carried light through the darkness. Today we face the same divide. Do we choose the way of Cain, trusting in technology, wealth, and our own might? Or do we choose the way of Seth, bending knees in prayer and placing our hope in God alone? Both lines still run through the world and perhaps through our own hearts. The truth of Genesis is this: civilizations without God crumble, but faith endures through generations. Ask yourself, are you building a city of pride or a legacy of prayer? That question leads us into a mystery even deeper, one that nearly consumed the earth. Sons of God versus daughters of men. The hidden corruption. Genesis 6 describes a scene so haunting that scholars have wrestled with it for centuries. The sons of God saw the daughters of men and took them as wives. From this forbidden union came the Nephilim, mighty men of renown, giants of corruption who filled the earth with violence. Some believe these sons of God were angels who abandoned their place. Others say they were the godly line of Seth mingling with the ungodly line of Cain. Whichever interpretation you embrace, the message is crystal clear. When holiness mixes with corruption, when the sacred joins with the profane, disaster follows. The flood that wiped away humanity was not a random act. It was the inevitable result of humanity erasing the boundary between light and darkness. Think about it. When a generation chooses lust over covenant, when marriages form without reverence, when compromise replaces conviction, the result is always decay. Look around our world today, marriages fractured, families broken, values dissolved. Does it not echo the days of Noah? The story warns us that the line between God's people and the world must never be blurred, for once it is, destruction looms. And yet even in judgment, God preserved a remnant. Noah, a man who walked with God, stood firm when the entire world collapsed. This lesson speaks to us with power. One person of faith can hold back a flood of corruption. The call of Genesis is not merely to observe history, but to choose. Will we live as children of God, or be swept into the tide of those who chase desire without restraint? The sons of God and the daughters of men remind us that compromise with sin is never small. It shapes destiny. This is the heartbeat of Genesis. The great divide is not an old tale, but the living choice of every generation. From Cain to Seth, from Abel to the Nephilim, the story repeats. And now the same question falls upon us. Which path will we walk, flesh versus spirit? The universal struggle. Deep inside every human heart, Genesis whispers of a battle older than time itself. The war between flesh and spirit. The flesh pulls us toward pride, lust, envy, and selfish gain. The spirit calls us higher, toward faith, surrender, humility, and life with God. This is not just a religious metaphor. It is the reality every one of us faces the moment we open our eyes in the morning. Think of the times you knew the right choice but still walked into the wrong one. The times you desired peace but chose anger. The times you longed for love but settled for emptiness. That is the war of Cain still raging inside us. In modern life, The flesh whispers through the endless chase for wealth, likes and status, while the spirit waits quietly, urging us to seek truth, to seek connection, to seek God. The mistake so many make is believing they can live in the middle, half in the world and half in the kingdom. But Genesis reveals that compromise is the quickest road to destruction. The lesson is urgent. You cannot serve both pride and faith, both flesh and spirit. Comment below. Do you think today's culture encourages us to feed the spirit, or are we being trained to live for the flesh? This question is not abstract. It is the very path your soul walks every single day. Noah, the remnant who walked with God. When the earth was drowning in violence and corruption, there stood one man who walked with God. His name was Noah, and his life proves that even when the entire world chooses sin, one faithful heart can change the future. Imagine the ridicule he endured, building a massive ark on dry land while neighbors mocked and laughed. Imagine the loneliness of raising children in a culture where every household was corrupted, every city filled with cruelty. Yet Noah remained steadfast, a flicker of light in an age of darkness. The flood came, sweeping away empires, silencing the laughter of the wicked, and yet Noah and his family survived because he chose obedience over convenience. This story is more than ancient history. It is prophecy for today. Look at our own generation, drowning in distractions, consumed by corruption, ignoring warnings. Will we be swept away, or will we rise like Noah, building our ark of faith, preparing a place of refuge for our families? The Bible teaches that majority does not equal truth, and numbers do not equal righteousness. Noah reminds us that God does not count heads, he weighs hearts. One family that fears God can outlast 1,000 nations built on pride. That is the healing promise of Genesis. The faithful remnant always survives. Abraham, the father of the faithful. Out of the land of idols, God called a man to leave everything familiar and step into the unknown. That man was Abraham, and through him we see the pattern of faith that still defines the two types of people in Genesis. On one side are those who cling to comfort, who never leave their homeland of security, who refuse to trust what they cannot see. On the other side are those who, like Abraham, dare to walk into the wilderness with nothing but a promise. Imagine packing your home, saying goodbye to family, not knowing where you are going, only that God said, "Go." That is faith in its rawest, most vulnerable form. And Abraham's journey gave birth to nations, to blessings, to a covenant that still echoes across the earth. His life teaches us that true greatness does not come from clinging to what is safe, but from surrendering to what God has spoken. In our modern world, this same test comes in different clothes. Will you stay in the comfort zone of Cain's city, or step out like Abraham into the unknown of faith? The decision determines your destiny. Perhaps the question for us today is this: are we raising children who trust in systems of wealth and success? Or are we raising children who trust in promises unseen? Abraham's legacy whispers a challenge to every generation. Greatness is not built on security, but on surrender. And this is why Genesis continues to speak so powerfully. It shows that the choice between flesh and spirit, corruption and faith, compromise and obedience, is the same choice set before every heart in every age. The pattern repeats throughout the Bible. From Genesis to Revelation, The same divide runs like a scar through history. The faithful who cling to God and the rebellious who chase their own way. The story of Cain and Abel is not an isolated tragedy. It is the opening chapter of a drama that echoes through every generation. Esau and Jacob, two brothers born of the same womb, yet one despised his birthright, while the other treasured the blessing. Israel stood at Sinai, some trembling in worship, while others bowed to a golden calf. Prophets wept over cities where a few righteous hearts cried out for justice, while the majority drowned in idolatry. And in the New Testament, the same division continues. Those who walk in the Spirit and those who live in the flesh. The Bible never hides this truth. There are always two paths, two choices, two kinds of people shaping the destiny of the world. Think of the empires that rose with dazzling glory. Egypt, Babylon, Rome. They built monuments, towers, and armies that terrified nations, but their pride became their downfall. Then think of the hidden remnant, often nameless, living in caves, whispering prayers, passing down the covenant from father to son, mother to daughter. History books celebrate kings and conquerors, but heaven celebrates the unseen faithful who refuse to bow. This is the paradox of Genesis. The crowd shouts, the remnant whispers, and yet the whisper outlasts the roar. Even today, this pattern lives on. Our world is divided between those who chase wealth, fame, and fleeting pleasure, and those who seek righteousness, humility, and eternal promise. The lesson could not be clearer. The line of Cain and the line of Seth are not just ancient genealogies, they are living realities. You see it in workplaces where some cut corners for success while others hold fast to integrity. You see it in families where some abandon faith for convenience while others hold the line of prayer. You even see it inside churches where the form of religion can hide hearts empty of love, and yet a small few still burn with genuine devotion. This is why the Bible warns us not to be deceived by numbers or appearances. The majority often chooses the broad road, but Jesus said the narrow road leads to life. Here is the healing truth. You are not trapped by the pattern of your family or your culture. Cain's choice does not have to be yours. The corruption of a city does not have to be your inheritance. Just as Noah stood alone in his generation, just as Abraham walked out of the land of idols, you too can choose faith when everyone else chooses compromise. This is not just a call to ancient Israel, it is a call to you. Ask yourself, are you living in the crowd's roar or the remnant's whisper? Comment below. Do you believe most people today are walking the broad road of Cain, or is there still a faithful remnant holding to the way of Seth? And this is the power of Genesis. It reveals that history is not random. It is a repeating pattern, a rhythm of faith and rebellion, obedience and corruption. The pattern will continue until the final day when every secret will be revealed. And as we move toward that day, the choice becomes sharper, the lines clearer, the urgency stronger. The Bible does not tell these stories so we can simply admire them. It tells them so we can see ourselves in them. Which type of person are you becoming? The answer to that question will not just define your life, it will echo into eternity. The story of Genesis has been a mirror for the human heart, showing us the two paths that every soul must walk. From Cain and Abel to Noah and Abraham, the Bible whispers one truth again and again. There are always two types of people. Those who live by the flesh, chasing power, pride, and the fleeting treasures of the world, and those who live by the Spirit, who dare to trust, who walk by faith even when the road is lonely, even when the cost is heavy. This divide is not ancient history. It is alive inside each of us today. Every decision we make, every word we speak, every action we take reveals which path we are choosing. And the sobering truth is this: you cannot walk both roads. Look around and you can see the echo of Genesis in our modern world. Cities rise with dazzling towers like the descendants of Cain, filled with innovation, but often empty of reverence. At the same time, small communities, even single families, echo the line of Seth, quietly keeping faith alive in prayer and devotion. Technology, wealth and fame roar loudly like Babylon, but somewhere a faithful remnant whispers the name of God, and in the end it is the whisper that outlasts the roar. The line of Cain seemed powerful, but it ended in ruin. The line of Seth seemed fragile, yet it carried the covenant all the way to Christ. That is the paradox of the Bible. What the world calls weak, heaven calls eternal. The struggle of flesh versus spirit is not out there, it is inside us. How many times do we feel Cain's anger boiling when someone else succeeds, while Abel's spirit quietly reminds us to offer our best with humility? How many times do we see Noah's courage to stand apart and feel the pull to stay silent instead? How many times does Abraham's faith call us into the unknown, yet fear tempts us to cling to comfort? This is why the Bible feels so alive, because it is not just telling us their story, it is telling us our story. Genesis is not about strangers, it is about you and me. And maybe the most healing truth is this: God never leaves himself without a witness. Even when the earth was corrupt, Noah stood firm. Even when idolatry spread, Abraham believed. Even when Cain's descendants built cities of power, Seth's descendants kept praying. The promise is clear. No matter how dark the world becomes, God's light always remains in those who choose him. That means you are never too small, never too broken, never too insignificant to matter. Your faith, even if it feels like a single candle in the storm, can carry hope for generations. So the question burns now: which type of person will you choose to be? Will you walk in the way of Cain, following the crowd into pride, anger and corruption? Or will you walk in the way of Abel, Seth, Noah and Abraham, those who dared to believe when the world mocked them, those who dared to walk with God when no one else would? Comment below with your thoughts. Do you believe most of humanity today reflects the path of Cain? Or are there still Noahs and Abrahams walking among us? This is not just history, it is prophecy, and your perspective might awaken something powerful in others who read it. If this journey through Genesis stirred your soul, if it reminded you of the light within your own story, I invite you to stay connected. Like this video if you felt the weight of its truth. Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering the hidden mysteries of the Bible, truths that are not just ancient words, but living fire for today. And if you found healing here, if you found a spark of hope in these words, I ask gently, share that energy back. Every small act of support helps me continue to create these videos, to keep lifting up the Word of God, to keep bringing light into places where people feel only darkness. Your encouragement, even the smallest gesture, is priceless. The Bible does not end with despair, and neither should we. The story of Genesis shows us the choice, but it also shows us the promise. Walk with God, and you will never be forgotten. Build your life on His Word, and you will not be swept away. Stand in faith, even if you stand alone, and you will become part of the remnant that carries light into the next generation. Cain's city is gone, but Abel's faith still speaks. Babylon fell, but Abraham's covenant still blesses nations, and so will your choice today echo long after you are gone. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Thank you for listening with an open heart. And thank you with all my heart for every like, every comment, every subscription, every silent prayer you lift as you watch. They are not small things, they are seeds of eternity. May you find yourself on the path of faith, the path of life, the path that leads home.